Caleb Thorne's hand moved before his mind caught up. He was already crossing the frozen street boots crunching through snow when his daughter's words finally registered. "Papa, can we buy that boy?" 6 words. That's all it took to crack open something he'd kept buried for 4 years since Clara died in his arms, since he'd sworn never to let anyone else close enough to hurt him again. But the child huddled beneath the merchant's awning wasn't moving, wasn't breathing right. And Caleb Thorne, who'd built walls around his heart thick enough to stop bullets, felt every single one of them crumble. Stay with me. Watch this story unfold to the very end. Hit that subscribe button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The December market in Silver Creek bustled with noise and light, but Caleb Thorne heard none of it. His daughter's small hand gripped his fingers as she pressed her nose against the general store window, marveling at porcelain dolls and painted wooden horses. Her breath fogged the glass. "Papa, look, that one's got real hair." Caleb smiled in a way he hadn't managed since Clara passed. Christmas did that to Lily, brought out the wonder that 4 years of motherless grief hadn't quite managed to kill. "We'll see what St. Nicholas brings," he said, "but I already told you what I want." "You told me 17 different things, little bird." Lily giggled, then stopped. Her grip tightened so hard it hurt. "Papa?" "What is it?" "Papa, look." He followed her gaze across the muddy street, past the wagon ruts and horse droppings to the shadow beneath the feed store awning. At first he thought it was a bundle of rags someone had discarded. Then the bundle moved. A boy. Couldn't be more than 8 or 9, though starvation made it hard to tell. Barefoot in December, shirt so thin Caleb could count ribs from 20 feet away. The child sat with his back against the post knees drawn to his chest arms wrapped around his shins. His eyes were open, watching, waiting for someone to notice him. People walked past. A woman in a fine wool coat stepped over his outstretched legs without breaking stride. A merchant swept snow from his entrance, the broom coming within inches of the boy's shoulder. Nobody stopped. Nobody looked. "Papa!" Lily tugged his hand. "Can we buy that boy?" The words hit Caleb like a fist to the chest. "Lily, we can't." "Why not? He needs somebody. We got room. And you always say we should help folks who need helpin'." "That ain't how it works, sweetheart." "Then how does it work? 'Cause it don't look like it's working at all." She was 7 years old. 7 years old, and she'd just asked the question that every adult in this goddamn town was too comfortable to voice. Caleb looked at the boy again. Really looked. The child's lips had the blue tinge. Frostbite starting on his fingers. He'd be dead by morning if the temperature dropped like the clouds promised. "Stay here," Caleb said. "Papa." "I mean it, Lily. Right here. Don't move." He crossed the street with long strides, his boots crunching through frozen mud. The boy's eyes tracked his approach the way a wounded animal watches a predator calculating distance, measuring threat, already planning how to run. Caleb stopped 6 feet away and crouched down slow. "Easy, son. Ain't gonna hurt you." The boy didn't respond, didn't blink, just watched. "You got a name?" Silence stretched between them. Then barely audible, "Jesse." "Jesse. All right. I'm Caleb Thorne. That's my daughter Lily over yonder." He gestured back to where Lily stood pressed against the store window, watching with fierce attention. "She thinks you might be hungry. Are you—" Something flickered across Jesse's face. Pride, maybe. The stubborn kind that came from having nothing else left to hold on to. "When's the last time you ate, Jesse?" The boy's jaw tightened. His resistance crumbled inch by inch until his shoulders sagged. "Don't remember. 2 days. Maybe 3. 2 days in Wyoming winter. Maybe 3. And nobody in this whole damn town had thought to offer him so much as a crust of bread." Caleb felt anger kindle in his gut, not at the boy, but at every soul who'd walked past this child and decided he wasn't their problem. "Come on." He stood and extended his hand. "There's a food stall round the corner. We'll get something hot in you." Jesse didn't move. I got no money. Didn't ask if you did. I ain't looking for charity. And I ain't offering it. I'm offering dinner. There's a difference. For a long moment, the boy just stared at Caleb's outstretched palm. Then slowly, like he expected the hand to turn into a fist, at any second, he uncurled from his defensive crouch and placed his small, filthy fingers in Caleb's. The touch sent a jolt through Caleb. The boy's skin was ice, literally ice, and so thin he could feel every fragile bone. Lily appeared at his elbow before they'd taken 3 steps. She studied Jesse with open curiosity. No disgust, no pity, just the frank assessment of childhood. I'm Lily. You're real dirty. Lily. It's all right. Jesse's voice was quiet but steady. I know I am. We can fix that, Lily decided. Papa's real good at fixing things. He fixed our whole cabin after the storm, and he fixed my doll when her arm came off, and he even fixed old Duchess's leg when she got hurt. Duchess? Our horse. She's the best horse in the whole territory. Despite everything, the cold, the hunger, the fear, something shifted in Jesse's expression. Not quite a smile, but close. They made their way through the market to the food stall, run by Ruth McAllister, a widow who sold meat pies and stew from a great iron pot that hung over coals. The smell alone made Jesse sway on his feet. Caleb steadied him with a hand on his shoulder, feeling the prominent ridge of his shoulder blade through the thin shirt. Ruth, 3 bowls and some bread. Ruth McAllister looked up from her pot. Her eyes moved to Jesse, taking in the bare feet, the hollow cheeks, the careful blankness of a child who'd learned not to hope. Something in her face shifted, hardened, then softened into something that looked remarkably like understanding. Make it 4 bowls, she said. And I'll throw in some biscuits. Cold night. She ladled out portions that were generous even by her standards, adding extra bread without charging for it. When Caleb reached for his coins, she shook her head. Your money's no good for this one, Mr. Thorne. Consider it my contribution. Ma'am, I know what it's like. Her voice dropped low enough that only Caleb could hear. My Henry died in those mines, left me with 2 babies and nothing but debt. If someone hadn't helped us back then... She shook her head. Just take the food, and take care of that boy. They sat on a bench near the fire, Jesse between Caleb and Lily. The boy held his bowl in both hands, warming his fingers against the heat. When he finally lifted the spoon to his mouth, he had to stop himself from gulping. Caleb saw the effort it took to go slow, to not make himself sick after days of nothing. Easy, he murmured. It ain't going anywhere. Lily ate her own stew while studying Jesse with open fascination. Where's your mama and papa? She asked. Caleb winced. Lily that ain't dead. Jesse said it flat like he was reporting the weather. Mine collapse. 2 years back. Both of them at once. The matter-of-fact delivery somehow made it worse. Caleb knew about mine collapses. Cave-ins, bad air explosions from gas pockets. They were common enough in Wyoming territory, where silver drew men desperate enough to risk their lives in the dark. I'm sorry, Caleb said, and meant it. Jesse shrugged, a gesture that tried for indifference and didn't quite land. Was a while ago. Where you been staying since... Around. The boy spooned up more stew, eyes fixed on his bowl. Worked at the mine for a while, hauling slag, running messages. Then I got sick. Couldn't work no more. They turned me out. Turned you out? Said I was using resources without contributing. Said the debt my folks owed still needed paying, and if I couldn't work it off, I wasn't their problem no more. Caleb's hands tightened on his own bowl. How long you been on the street? Since spring. 5 months, maybe 6. 6 months. A 10-year-old boy surviving on the streets of Silver Creek for 6 months, and nobody had done a damn thing about it. Lily had gone very quiet. When Caleb glanced at her, she was staring at Jesse with an expression that reminded him painfully of Clara, that same fierce protective love his wife had shown to every wounded creature she'd ever found. You can't sleep outside tonight, Lily announced. You'll die. I got a place. Where? Under the mill bridge. It stays pretty dry. That ain't a place. That's just outside with a roof. Lily. Caleb's voice carried a warning, but she turned to him with those eyes. Clara's eyes blue-gray like storm clouds, and asked the question he'd been dreading. Can he come home with us? Just for tonight, Papa. Please. He'll freeze if he sleeps under that bridge. She wasn't wrong. The temperature was already dropping as the sun sank behind the western peaks. By midnight, it would be well below freezing. By dawn, anyone without proper shelter might not wake up at all. Caleb looked at Jesse. The boy had set down his spoon and was watching this exchange with a carefully blank expression. The look of someone who'd learned not to hope because disappointment hurt less when you weren't expecting anything. That look decided it. One night, Caleb said, and watched Jesse's eyes widen. You'll sleep in the barn where it's warm. You'll get a proper meal, and tomorrow we'll figure out something more permanent. Understood. Jesse nodded, speechless. Lily threw her arms around Caleb's neck. Thank you, Papa. Thank you, thank you. He hugged her back, breathing in the scent of her hair. Wood smoke and pine soap, and something uniquely Lily. Over her shoulder, he met Jesse's gaze and saw it the desperate gratitude of someone who'd been drowning and just felt solid ground under their feet for the first time in months. Finish your stew, Caleb said gruffly. It's a long ride home. They left town as the market lanterns were being extinguished one by one. Caleb's horse, Duchess, carried all three of them, Caleb in the saddle, Lily in front of him, and Jesse perched behind, clinging to Caleb's coat with thin fingers. The boy was so light that Caleb barely felt the extra weight. That fact alone made his chest tighten. The trail home climbed steadily into the foothills. Lily fell asleep against his chest within the first mile, lulled by the rocking gait of the horse. Behind him, Jesse stayed awake. Caleb could feel the tension in the boy's grip, the alertness that came from never being truly safe. How far? Jesse asked quietly. Another hour. Silence. Then, why are you helping me? It was a fair question. Caleb considered several answers before settling on the truth. My daughter asked me to. That's it. That's enough. More silence. The trail switchbacked up a steep section, and Duchess picked her way carefully over rocks hidden beneath the snow. I won't steal nothing, Jesse said suddenly. And I can work. I'm stronger than I look. I know I don't seem like much, but I can earn my keep. I swear it. The desperate edge in his voice made Caleb's chest ache. I know you won't steal. And you ain't here to work, Jesse. You're here because no child should sleep under a bridge in winter. I ain't a child. I'm almost 11. That's still a child. Jesse fell silent again, but Caleb could feel him thinking. The boy was trying to figure out the angle to catch. In his experience, nobody did anything without wanting something in return. Caleb understood that logic. He'd learned it himself the hard way years ago, before Clara had taught him that kindness didn't always come with strings attached. The cabin appeared as they crested the final ridge. Lamplight glowed in the window left burning to guide them home. Jesse's grip on Caleb's coat tightened. Is that where you live? That's home. Pine Ridge. The boy's voice cracked. It's real nice. Caleb helped Lily down first, still mostly asleep, then reached back for Jesse. The boy slid off the horse and his legs nearly buckled when his bare feet hit the snow. Jesus. Caleb scooped Jesse up before he could protest and carried him toward the cabin. The boy was stiff in his arms, unused to being held, but too cold and exhausted to fight it. Inside, the fire had burned down to coals. Caleb laid Jesse on the rug in front of the hearth and went to stir up the flames. Lily stumbled to her bed in the loft, murmuring sleepy goodnights. Within minutes, fresh wood caught, and the fire blazed up, throwing warm light across the cabin. Jesse sat huddled on the rug, looking around with wide eyes. His gaze moved from the sturdy table to the shelves of supplies to Clara's rocking chair in the corner. "You hungry?" Caleb asked. Jesse shook his head, though his eyes lingered on the bread and cheese sitting on the table. "Don't lie to me, son. If you're hungry, say so." The boy's defenses crumbled. "Yes, sir." Caleb cut thick slices of bread and cheese, poured 2 cups of milk. They ate in silence, Jesse watching Caleb like he expected to be thrown back out into the cold at any moment. When the food was gone, Caleb fetched a wooden tub from the corner. Jesse watched with growing alarm. "What's that for?" "You. When's the last time you had a proper bath?" "I don't need—" "That wasn't a question." Caleb softened his tone when he saw genuine fear flash across the boy's face. "I ain't gonna hurt you, Jesse, but you can't sleep in my barn covered in half the street dirt in Silver Creek. You'll get clean, you'll get warm, and then you'll sleep. Clear." Jesse nodded slowly. Caleb hauled water from the kettle, filled the tub, and set soap and a rag beside it. Then he turned his back to give the boy privacy. Behind him, he heard Jesse strip off his filthy clothes and climb into the water. A sharp intake of breath. "It's hot." "That's the idea." Caleb busied himself with banking the fire, trying not to think about the last time he'd filled this tub. For Clara. Near the end. When she'd been too weak to manage it herself. He pushed the memory down. When he finally turned around, Jesse was sitting in the tub with his arms wrapped around his knees, soap suds floating on the surface. Clean, the boy looked even younger. All sharp angles and pale skin. Dark hair plastered to his skull. But the bruises stood out now. Purple and yellow marks across his ribs. A darker one on his shoulder blade. The faded lines of something that might have been a belt across his back. "Those bruises," Caleb said quietly. "They from before." Jesse's jaw tightened. "Don't matter now." "Who hit you?" "Nobody." "Jesse." The boy's hands clenched under the water. "Foreman at the mine, Mr. Wade, said I was too slow, said I needed motivation." Silas Wade. Caleb knew the name, knew the reputation. Consolidated Mining's attack dog, the man they sent when workers needed motivation or families needed convincing to sign over claims. "He do this to other kids." "Yes, sir. All of us who worked the slag pile. Said pain was the only language trash like us understood." Caleb felt something cold settle in his chest. The kind of cold that had nothing to do with winter. "Get dried off," he said. "I'll fetch you something to wear." He found an old flannel shirt in his trunk, one that would hang to Jesse's knees but would be warm. Wool socks that had been Clara's never worn because she'd died before winter came. When Jesse emerged from the tub dried and dressed, he looked like a different child. Still too thin, still haunted but cleaner, more human. "The barn's this way," Caleb said. He led Jesse outside and across the yard to the barn. Duchess nickered a greeting from her stall. Jesse approached the horse cautiously, one hand extended. Duchess sniffed his palm, then allowed him to stroke her neck. "She likes you," Caleb observed. "I like horses." Something almost like warmth crept into Jesse's voice. "We had one before. Old plow horse named Duke. Pa used to let me ride him sometimes." Caleb climbed into the hayloft and spread blankets over the loose hay, creating a nest that would trap heat. Jesse followed slowly, still moving like something might attack him. "This is for me?" Jesse asked, staring at the makeshift bed. "Unless you'd rather sleep standing up." The boy knelt and ran his hand over the blanket. Wonder spread across his face. "It's soft." Something in Caleb cracked. "Get in before the heat escapes." Jesse burrowed under the blankets, fully clothed, even the oversized socks. He curled on his side and looked up at Caleb with an expression that was trying very hard not to be hopeful. "You'll really let me stay till morning?" "I said I would." "And then what?" Caleb had been asking himself the same question for the last 3 hours. The smart thing would be to take Jesse back to town in the morning, find the sheriff, Ask about the boy's situation. Let someone official handle it. But looking at this child, still half convinced, this was a dream he'd wake from cold and hungry, Caleb couldn't quite make himself say it. "We'll figure it out," he said instead. "For now, just sleep." He climbed down from the loft, but paused at the barn door. "Jesse." "Yes, sir." "You're safe here. Whatever happens tomorrow tonight, you're safe. You understand?" A long pause. Then, so quiet, Caleb almost missed it. "Yes, sir. Thank you." Caleb walked back to the cabin under a sky brilliant with stars. One night, he told himself. Just one night. But somewhere deep down in the place where Clara's memory still lived, he knew he was lying. Some doors once opened couldn't be closed again. Morning came cold and bright. Caleb woke to find Lily already dressed and standing at his bedside, practically vibrating with anticipation. "Is he still there? Can I go check Papa? Is he still there? Hold on, little bird, let me get my boots on." He dressed quickly and they crossed the yard together, their breath misting in the frozen air. The barn was quiet, too quiet. Caleb's heart hammered as he climbed the loft ladder. The blankets were empty. "He's gone," Lily whispered behind him. "Papa, he left." But then Caleb heard it, the soft sound of someone talking to the horse below. They found Jessie in Duchess's stall brushing her coat with careful strokes, while murmuring words too quiet to make out. He'd found an old curry comb somewhere and was working through the tangles in her mane. When he noticed them watching, he froze. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I just woke up early and she was making sounds, and I thought maybe she needed—" "You brush horses before," Caleb interrupted. Jessie swallowed. "Some. Back when we had Duke." "You're doing it right. She likes the way you're holding the comb." Relief flooded the boy's face. "I didn't mean to overstep." "You didn't." Caleb stepped into the stall. "Finish up with her, then come inside. Breakfast's waiting." Jessie's hands stilled on the brush. "You want me to come? Inside? To the cabin?" "That's where we keep the food." "But I thought—" He stopped. Reset. "Yes, sir. I'll be quick." Over breakfast, bacon, biscuits, eggs that Lily proudly announced she'd helped make, Caleb watched Jessie eat. The boy had better control today. Slower bites, more deliberate, like he was storing up fuel for whatever came next. "Jessie." Caleb set down his coffee cup. "I need to ask you some questions about the mine." The fork in Jessie's hand went still. "What kind of questions?" "About your folks. What company they worked for. Whether there's anyone who might be looking for you." "Ain't nobody looking." The words came quick and flat. "I've been gone 6 months and nobody came. Nobody cared." "Maybe not. But I need to know the situation before I can figure out what to do next." Jessie set down his fork, met Caleb's eyes directly. "My pa worked for Blackwell Mining up at Copper Ridge. Him and Ma both died in the same collapse, bad timber, they said, but everybody knew the company was cutting corners. After they passed, Mr. Wade told me I could work off my folks' debt or get out. Debt. Room and board, equipment costs, store credit. Pa owed the company $300 when he died. Mr. Wade said that debt passed to me. $300, a fortune for a mining family. Enough to trap a child in bondage for years. How old were you when they put you to work?" 9. "And they had you hauling slag. Slag pile first. Then the tunnels when I got bigger. Tight spaces mostly. Places the men couldn't fit." Caleb's hands clenched under the table. "The sickness that made you stop. What was it?" "Coughing mostly. Started in spring. Got so bad I couldn't breathe right. Couldn't work. Mr. Wade said if I couldn't work, I was just using resources." Jessie's voice stayed flat, recounting horrors like grocery lists. "Threw me out in April. Been on my own since." Lily had stopped eating. Her face was pale. "That ain't right," she said. "That ain't right at all." "It's how things are. Jesse replied. Doesn't mean it's how they should be. Something flickered in Jesse's expression. Surprise, maybe, that anyone would think to argue with the way the world worked. Caleb made a decision. Lily, finish your breakfast. Jesse, when you're done eating, you're gonna help me with the morning chores. We've got a lot to talk about. Yes, sir. Jesse paused. Mr. Thorne, you said we'd figure things out today. Does that mean you're taking me back to town? The question hung in the air. Lily's fork clattered to her plate. Papa, no. I didn't say that. But you're thinking it. I can tell. She crossed her arms. He can't go back there. Those people hurt him. They'll hurt him again. Lily, he should stay with us. We got room. He can help with chores. He already brushed Duchess better than I do. It ain't that simple. Why not? She was on her feet now, all 7 years of stubborn fury. Why does everything got to be complicated? He needs a home. We got a home. What's complicated about that? Caleb opened his mouth to explain about laws and debt claims, and how the world didn't work the way little girls thought it should. But Jesse spoke first. She's right that it ain't simple. His voice was steady despite the tears gathering in his eyes. Your pa's got his own family to worry about, Lily. Taking in strays is a nice idea, but nice ideas don't fill bellies or keep the cold out. I understand that. I've been understanding it my whole life. He pushed back from the table. Thank you for the food, Mr. Thorne, for the warm bed. It was more than anybody's given me in a long time. I'll be out of your way soon as I can get my things together. He was halfway to the door when Caleb's voice stopped him. Sit down, Jesse. The boy turned. Sir? I said sit down. We ain't done talking. Jesse hesitated. Then slowly, like he expected the chair to be pulled out from under him, he returned to the table. Caleb leaned forward. I ain't decided anything yet. What I know is this, you're a child who's been treated worse than most folks treat their animals. You've got nobody looking out for you and nowhere to go. That ain't right, and it ain't something I can just walk away from. But I also know that keeping you here means taking on responsibility I ain't sure I'm ready for. It means potentially making enemies of Blackwell Mining and whoever else thinks they've got a claim on you. It means explaining to this town why a widower with one daughter suddenly has a son. Jesse flinched at the word son. I ain't asking to be your son, Mr. Thorne. I know what you're asking for, Jesse. You're asking for a chance. Same thing every kid deserves, and most kids take for granted. Caleb's voice roughened. I had a little sister once, Rebecca. She died of yellow fever when she was 12. I was off rangering when it happened. Wasn't there to help, wasn't there to hold her hand. He hadn't talked about Rebecca in years, hadn't said her name out loud since Clara's funeral. I couldn't save her, couldn't save my wife when she got sick. But maybe... He stopped, swallowed. Maybe I can do something about you. Lily's hand crept across the table and grabbed Jesse's. Please stay, she whispered. Please. Jesse looked at her small fingers wrapped around his, then up at Caleb. His face was a war zone of hope and terror. You mean it? You'd really let me stay? I'm saying we'll try. See how things work out. No promises about forever, but for now. Caleb extended his hand across the table. For now, you've got a place here, if you want it. Jesse stared at the offered hand. Then he reached out and took it. His grip was firm. His eyes were wet. I want it, he said. More than anything. Outside, the winter sun climbed higher over the mountains, and 3 people who'd been broken in different ways began slowly to piece themselves back together. But far away in an office overlooking the Blackwell mining operation, a man named Silas Wade was receiving some very interesting news about a runaway debtor who'd been spotted in Silver Creek, and he was not pleased. The first week passed like a held breath. Jesse worked harder than any child should have to. Up before dawn, feeding chickens, hauling water, splitting kindling with hands still raw from months on the street. He moved through chores like someone trying to prove his worth before it could be questioned. Caleb watched him from the cabin window, coffee growing cold in his hands. "He thinks you're going to change your mind," Lily said, appearing at his elbow. "That's why he works so hard. He's scared." "How do you know that?" "Because that's what I'd think. If somebody gave me something good, I'd be scared they'd take it back." 7 years old, and already wiser than most adults Caleb knew. "Go tell him breakfast is ready." Lily ran outside her boots, leaving small prints in the fresh snow. Caleb watched her reach Jesse at the woodpile, watched her tug his sleeve and say something that made the boy's shoulders relax just slightly. They came inside together, Lily chattering about teaching Jesse to read, Jesse listening with that careful attention he gave to everything. "Mr. Thorne?" Jesse hung his coat by the door. "I finished the woodpile. What else needs doing?" "Nothing right now. Sit down and eat." "But there must be something. I can check on Duchess or mend that fence section by the creek or—" "Jesse?" Caleb's voice was gentle but firm. "Sit. Eat. That's all you need to do right now." The boy hesitated, then slid into his chair at the table, hands folded in his lap, waiting for permission to touch the food. "You don't have to earn breakfast," Caleb said quietly. "You don't have to earn anything here. Understand?" Jesse nodded, but his eyes said he didn't believe it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. They were halfway through the meal when Duchess whinnied from the barn, a sharp warning sound that Caleb recognized immediately. Riders coming. He was on his feet and reaching for his rifle before the second whinny finished. "Lily, Jesse, get in the loft, now." "Papa." "Now, Lily." The children scrambled up the ladder. Caleb moved to the window, positioning himself where he could see the trail while staying partially hidden. 3 men on horseback emerged from the tree line. The lead rider was broad and heavy, wearing a dark coat and a hat pulled low. Behind him rode 2 younger men with the look of hired muscle. Caleb recognized the man in front. Silas Wade. His grip tightened on the rifle. Wade reined in his horse 20 feet from the cabin. His eyes swept the property with proprietary interest before settling on the window where Caleb stood. "Morning, Thorne," Wade's voice carried across the yard. "Mind stepping outside? Got some business to discuss." Caleb didn't move. "Say what you got to say from there." "Prefer to do this civil-like, face to face. And I prefer keeping distance between my family and men who beat children. Speak your piece, Wade." Something ugly flickered across Wade's face. "See, that's the problem with you ranger types. Always thinking you know the whole story when you only got half of it. I know enough. Do you? You know that boy you're harboring is property of Blackwell Mining, that his folks died owing the company $300, and that debt passed to him legal as sunrise. A child ain't property. Law says different." Wade reached into his coat and produced a folded document. "Got papers right here. Debt transfer signed by the territorial judge. That boy owes labor to Blackwell Mining until the balance is paid. You're interfering with legitimate business." "Show me." Wade nudged his horse closer and extended the paper. Caleb didn't leave the doorway, just let Wade ride close enough to hand it over. He scanned the document quickly. Official looking, proper seals, judge's signature at the bottom. But something was wrong. The ink on the signature was darker than the rest, fresher, like it had been added after the original document was created. "This is a forgery," Caleb said flatly. Wade's smile didn't falter. "Now why would you say something like that?" "Because I know Judge Harrison's signature. Served with his son in the Rangers. This ain't it." For just a moment, uncertainty flickered in Wade's eyes. Then the smile returned harder now. "Don't matter whether you believe it or not. What matters is, I've got 3 men and you've got 1 rifle. We can do this the easy way, you bring out the boy and we leave peaceful. Or we can do it the hard way." He leaned forward in his saddle. "Your choice." Caleb raised the rifle. "Here's my choice. You've got to the count of 10 to get off my property. You ain't serious. 1. Thorn, be reasonable. 2. The company's got lawyers, got connections in the territorial government. You really want to make an enemy of Blackwell Mining over some worthless 3. Wade's hand drifted toward his holster. The two men behind him did the same. You pull that trigger, you're a dead man, Wade said softly. Maybe you take one of us down, but the other two will put holes in you before you can reload. Then what happens to that pretty little daughter of yours? Caleb's blood went cold. 4. Think about it, Thorn. Really think. Is that boy worth dying for? Worth leaving your girl an orphan? The cabin door creaked behind him. Mr. Thorn. Jesse's voice was quiet but steady. Don't. Caleb didn't turn. I told you to stay in the loft. I know, but I ain't worth getting killed over. I ain't worth your daughter losing her pa. Jesse stepped forward, positioning himself at Caleb's shoulder. I'll go with them. It's all right. I always knew this couldn't last. Jesse. Thank you for everything, for the food and the warm bed, and making me feel like maybe I could be worth something. I won't forget it. The boy's voice cracked, but he didn't cry. Tell Lily I'm sorry I couldn't stay. He started toward the door. Caleb's hand shot out and grabbed his arm. You ain't going anywhere. But I said no. Caleb looked at Wade. The boy stays. Then you're a fool. Maybe. But I'm a fool with a rifle and you're trespassing. 5. Wade's jaw tightened. He glanced at his men, calculating odds. 3 against 1. Should be easy. But Caleb Thorne had the look of a man who'd killed before and would do it again without hesitation. The kind of man who might take all 3 of them down before he fell. This ain't over, Wade said finally. Never thought it was. We'll be back, with proper authority, with the sheriff. And when we come, you'll hand that boy over or face charges. Looking forward to it. Wade wheeled his horse around. His men followed. They disappeared down the trail, but their threat hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Jesse was shaking. Caleb set down the rifle and turned to face him. The boy's face was white, his hands clenched at his sides. You should have let me go, Jesse whispered. Now they'll come back. They'll hurt you. Hurt Lily. Nobody's hurting anybody. You don't know that. You don't know what Mr. Wade is capable of. I've seen him. Jesse stopped, swallowed. I've seen him do things, bad things, to people who crossed him. I've seen worse. You ain't afraid of him. I'm terrified of him. Caleb crouched down so they were eye level. I'm terrified of losing Lily, of failing another person I care about, of being the man who couldn't protect his family when it mattered. Jesse blinked. Then why? Because being afraid doesn't mean you run. It means you plant your feet and fight harder. My wife taught me that. My sister taught me that by dying before I could learn it the easy way. Caleb gripped Jesse's shoulders. You're part of this family now, and family doesn't give each other up, not to men like Wade, not to anybody. But I'm not really your family, not truly. Do you want to be? The question hung between them. Jesse's lip trembled. His careful composure cracked, and for a moment, he was just a scared little boy who'd been alone too long. Yes, he whispered. More than anything. Then you are. Simple as that. Lily's voice came from the loft. Does that mean I have a brother now? Both of them looked up. She was peering over the edge, eyes wide. We'll talk about that later, Caleb said. Right now, I need you both to pack a bag. We're going to town. Why? Because we need to see Sheriff Cole and Judge Ashworth. Caleb stood his jaw set. If they want to fight legal, we'll fight legal, and we're going to win. The ride to Silver Creek took 3 hours. Caleb pushed Duchess faster than he liked, knowing that every minute gave Wade time to prepare. Jesse sat behind him, arms wrapped around his waist, silent and tense. Lily rode in front, occasionally reaching back to touch Jesse's arm in reassurance. The town was bustling when they arrived. Saturday market. People moving between stalls, loading wagons, calling greetings to neighbors. Normal life, as if nothing was wrong. Caleb tied Duchess outside the sheriff's office and lifted both children down. "Stay close. Don't talk to anyone I don't introduce you to." Inside, Sheriff Marcus Cole sat at his desk, cleaning his revolver with methodical precision. He looked up when Caleb entered, and his weathered face creased with concern. "Thorne, wasn't expecting you." His eyes moved to Jesse, lingered, returned to Caleb. "This about what I think it's about. You heard. Silas Wade was in here an hour ago, demanding I ride out to your place and arrest you for theft of company property." Cole set down the revolver. "Told him to go to hell." Relief loosened something in Caleb's chest. "Appreciate that." "Don't appreciate it yet. I bought you time, but I can't hold him off forever. If he's got legal papers, he's got forgeries." Cole raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that?" "Judge Harrison's signature. I know it. What Wade showed me wasn't it." "That's a serious accusation." "It's the truth." Cole studied him for a long moment. Then he stood and reached for his hat. "All right, let's go see Judge Ashworth. If anyone can sort this out, it's him." They found Judge Samuel Ashworth in his chambers, a lean man in his 60s with white hair and eyes that missed nothing. He listened without interruption as Caleb explained the situation. When Caleb finished, Ashworth was quiet for a long time. "This boy." He looked at Jesse. "What's your name, son?" "Jesse, sir. Jesse Dawson." "And your parents worked for Blackwell Mining?" "Yes, sir. Until they died." "How did they die?" "Cave-in. 2 years ago. Bad timber in Shaft 7. Whole crew went down. 12 men. My pa was one of them. My ma—" Jesse's voice wavered. "She was bringing them lunch. Wrong place, wrong time." Ashworth's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened. "I remember that collapse. Blackwell claimed it was natural causes, unstable rock. They lied." Jesse's hands clenched. Everybody knew they lied. The timber was rotten. Foreman had been warning about it for months, but replacing it cost money, so they didn't. "And afterward they put you to work. Said my folks owed $300. Said I had to pay it off or else." "Or else what?" Jesse didn't answer, but his hand moved unconsciously to his shoulder where the worst of the belt scars hid beneath his shirt. Ashworth saw the gesture. His jaw tightened. "Sheriff Cole, would you step outside with Miss Lily for a moment? I need to examine the boy." Cole nodded and held out his hand to Lily. "Come on, little miss. Let's see if the general store has any peppermint sticks." Lily looked at Caleb. He nodded. "Go ahead. We won't be long." When the door closed, Ashworth stood. "Jesse, I need you to take off your shirt. Can you do that?" Jesse went pale. His eyes darted to Caleb. "It's all right," Caleb said quietly. "He needs to see, to understand." Slowly, with shaking hands, Jesse unbuttoned the flannel shirt and let it slip from his shoulders. Ashworth's breath caught. The scars were worse than Caleb had realized. Belt marks crisscrossed the boy's back in layers, some faded white, some still pink and healing. Burn marks on his shoulder. A long, jagged scar along his rib cage that looked like it had been made by something sharp. "Who did this?" Ashworth's voice was barely controlled. "Mr. Wade, mostly. Sometimes the other foreman. When we were too slow. When we complained. When we tried to run." "When you tried to run?" "I wasn't the first. Other kids ran before me. They always got caught. When they brought them back—" Jesse's voice dropped to a whisper. "They made us watch what happened to them, so we'd know." Ashworth closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were bright with rage. "Put your shirt back on, son." He turned to Caleb. "Mr. Thorne, I'm going to ask you a question, and I need an honest answer." "Ask." Are you prepared to legally adopt this boy, to make him your son in the eyes of the law with all the responsibilities that entails? Caleb didn't hesitate. Yes. You understand what that means. The company won't give up easily. There will be lawyers, court battles, possibly worse. They have money, they have connections. They will fight you. I know. And you're willing to take that on for a child you've known barely a week. Caleb looked at Jesse. The boy was watching him with that expression again, the one that wanted to hope, but was afraid to. I lost my wife 4 years ago, Caleb said. Lost my sister before that. Spent most of my life losing people I couldn't save. But I found this boy when he needed finding, and I'm not going to lose him too. Not to Wade, not to Blackwell, not to anybody. Ashworth studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. Good answer. He moved to his desk and began pulling out documents. I'm going to draw up adoption papers today. Emergency process given the circumstances. We'll need witnesses, signatures, the whole legal framework. Once it's done, any debt claim becomes void. You can't hold a man's legally adopted son in bondage for the dead parent's debts. How long will it take? If we work fast, we can have it done by tonight. Jesse made a sound, small and broken, like something inside him had finally snapped. Tonight, his voice cracked. You mean, he'll really be your father. Ashworth's voice gentled. Legally and permanently, if that's what you want. Jesse looked at Caleb. Tears were streaming down his face now, and he wasn't even trying to stop them. Is that what you want, Jesse? Caleb asked. The boy's voice broke completely. I don't deserve... That's not what I asked. Caleb crossed to him and knelt down. Do you want this? Do you want to be my son? Jesse threw himself into Caleb's arms with a force that nearly knocked them both over. His thin body shook with sobs he'd been holding back for years. Yes, he gasped. Yes, please, yes. Caleb held him tight. His own eyes were burning, but he didn't care. Then it's done. The adoption papers were signed at sunset. Sheriff Cole served as witness. Ruth McAllister, who'd heard what was happening and insisted on being present. Reverend Crane from the church. 4 signatures swearing that Jesse Dawson was now legally and forever Jesse Thorne. Ashworth stamped the final document and handed it to Caleb. Congratulations, Mr. Thorne. You have a son. Lily grabbed Jesse's hand. And I have a brother, for real. Jesse wiped his eyes with his sleeve. For real. For real and forever. Right, Papa. Caleb tucked the adoption papers into his coat. For real and forever. They were walking to the door when it burst open. Silas Wade stood on the threshold, flanked by his 2 men. His face was mottled with rage. You think papers are going to stop this? He pushed into the room. You think some small-town judge can stand against Blackwell Mining? Mr. Wade. Ashworth's voice was ice. You're interrupting official court business. To hell with your court business. That boy is company property, and I'm taking him back. That boy is Jesse Thorne, legally adopted son of Caleb Thorne. Any claim you had died the moment this document was signed. Wade's eyes locked on the papers in Caleb's coat. Something dangerous moved behind them. Give me those papers. No. I wasn't asking. His hand went to his gun. Everything happened at once. Caleb shoved Jesse behind him. Cole drew his revolver. Ashworth grabbed Lily and pulled her toward the back of the room. But Ruth McAllister moved faster than any of them. She stepped between Wade and Caleb, arms outstretched, blocking the line of fire. You want to shoot a woman, Silas? In front of witnesses. In the judge's own chambers. Wade's hand froze on his holster. Move, Ruth. No. This ain't your fight. The hell it isn't. You killed my husband in that mine. Worked him until his lungs gave out, then threw him away like garbage. You've done the same to dozens of others. Hundreds, maybe. Her voice shook with fury. But not this boy. Not today. Wade's jaw worked. His eyes swept the room, Caleb with his hand on his gun, Cole with his revolver already drawn, Ashworth watching with cold authority. 5 against 3, and witnesses everywhere. "This ain't over," he growled. "You keep saying that," Caleb said, "and I keep not being impressed." Wade glared at him with pure hatred. Then he turned and stalked out, his men following. The room let out a collective breath. Ruth's hands were shaking. Caleb caught them in his own. "Thank you." She looked up at him, eyes still fierce. "He won't stop. You know that, right? Men like Wade don't know how to stop. He'll find another way, a worse way." "I know. And you're still going to fight." "I'm still going to fight." Something shifted in her expression, something that looked like respect, maybe something more. "Then you're either the bravest man I've ever met," she said, "or the stupidest. Can it be both?" She laughed despite everything. A short, surprised sound that transformed her face. "I suppose it can." Jesse tugged Caleb's sleeve. "Can we go home now? Please." Home. The word hit Caleb like a fist to the chest. "Yeah," he said roughly. "Let's go home." They rode out of Silver Creek as the last light faded from the sky. 3 figures on horseback heading into the mountains. Behind them, the town settled into evening rhythms. Lamps lit in windows, smoke curling from chimneys. But in the Blackwell mining office at the edge of town, Silas Wade sat alone in the darkness, staring at nothing. He'd underestimated Caleb Thorne, underestimated the judge, underestimated all of them. He wouldn't make that mistake again. His hand reached for pen and paper. He began to write. A message to the company headquarters, to Edgar Blackwell himself. The letter was short, direct. "Situation requires your personal attention. Standard methods insufficient. Please advise on alternatives." He sealed it and called for a writer. By morning, it would be in Blackwell's hands. And by nightfall, everything would change. 3 days of peace. That's all they got. 3 days of Jesse learning to ride Duchess properly, Lily teaching him letters by the fire, Caleb allowing himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the worst was over. On the 4th morning, he woke to the sound of horses. Not 1 horse, not 3. A dozen, maybe more. Caleb grabbed his rifle and moved to the window. His blood went cold. Silas Wade sat at the head of a column of riders. But the man beside him was the one who made Caleb's stomach drop. Edgar Blackwell. He'd never met the mining magnate in person, but everyone in Wyoming territory knew that face. Thin and sharp with wire-rimmed spectacles that caught the morning light. The kind of man who smiled while he destroyed lives. "Pa." Jesse's voice came from the loft. Scared. Small. "Stay up there, both of you. Don't come down no matter what." "But, Jesse, promise me." A pause. Then, "I promise." Caleb checked his rifle and stepped onto the porch. Blackwell raised a gloved hand and the column halted. His smile was pleasant, reasonable. The smile of a man who'd already won and was simply going through formalities. "Mr. Thorne, I don't believe we've had the pleasure." "Can't say it's a pleasure I was seeking." "Direct. I appreciate that." Blackwell dismounted with the ease of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I've come to discuss a rather delicate matter. The boy you've illegally adopted." "Nothing illegal about it. Judge Ashworth signed the papers himself." "Ah, yes, Judge Ashworth." Blackwell's smile didn't falter. "A good man. Principled. Unfortunately, principles don't always align with reality." He reached into his coat and produced a document. "This is a writ from the Territorial Court in Cheyenne. It supersedes any local ruling and orders the immediate return of Jesse Dawson to company custody." Caleb didn't move to take it. "His name is Jesse Thorne now." "Names can be changed back." Blackwell extended the paper. "I'd encourage you to read this carefully, Mr. Thorne. It's quite legally binding." Like the forgery Wade tried to show me last week. Something flickered in Blackwell's eyes. I don't know what you're referring to. Sure you do. Fake signature from Judge Harrison. Your man Wade seemed real confident about it until I pointed out the inconsistencies. If there were any irregularities in previous documentation, I assure you, they've been corrected. Blackwell's voice hardened slightly. This writ is genuine, signed by Judge Caldwell himself. You can verify it if you like. Caleb took the document, scanned it. It looked real. Proper seals, proper signatures, proper legal language. If it was a forgery, it was a damn good one. Even if this is legitimate, Caleb said slowly, the adoption stands. You can't force a man's legally adopted son into debt bondage. Actually, I can, if the adoption was obtained under false pretenses. What false pretenses? You failed to disclose that the child in question was already bound by legal debt obligation. That makes the adoption fraudulent. Blackwell's smile returned. Judge Caldwell agrees. The adoption is hereby nullified. The words hit Caleb like a physical blow. Nullified. You can't do that. It's already done. Blackwell gestured to his men. Now we can do this peacefully, or we can do it the other way. Your choice. Caleb raised his rifle. I choose the other way. Mr. Thorne, please. You're one man against 12. Whatever you're planning won't end well for you or your daughter. Maybe not, but it won't end well for some of your men either. You want to explain to their families why they died trying to kidnap a child? Blackwell's pleasant facade cracked. Just slightly. You're being unreasonable. I'm being a father. You're being a fool. Wouldn't be the first time. They stared at each other. Caleb's finger rested on the trigger ready. Blackwell sighed. Very well. If you insist on making this difficult. He nodded to Wade. Wade grinned. Drew his pistol. Aimed it not at Caleb, but at the cabin window. Put down the rifle, Thorne, or I put a bullet through that glass and into whoever's hiding behind it. Caleb's blood turned to ice. Lily. Jesse. Both up in the loft directly in the line of fire. You wouldn't. Try me. Wade's grin widened. I've done worse for less. Caleb's hands shook. His mind raced through options, finding none. 12 men, 1 rifle, 2 children he'd sworn to protect. Slowly, agonizingly, he lowered the rifle. Smart choice. Blackwell nodded to 2 of his men. Get the boy. They dismounted and approached the cabin. Caleb stood frozen, hatred burning in his chest. The door opened. Jesse walked out on his own. No. Caleb started forward. Jesse, get back inside. It's all right, Pa. Jesse's voice was steady, too steady. The voice of someone who'd already accepted the worst. I always knew this couldn't last. Good things never do. Not for someone like me. Jesse. Thank you, for everything. For making me feel like maybe I was worth something. Tears streamed down the boy's face, but he didn't look away. Tell Lily I'm sorry. Tell her I'll never forget her. You ain't going anywhere. Yes, I am. Jesse turned to face Blackwell. I'll come quiet. No trouble. Just promise you'll leave them alone. Promise you won't hurt Lily or her pa. Blackwell studied him with something that might have been amusement. You're negotiating. I'm asking. Very well, I give you my word. The Thorns will not be harmed. Jesse nodded, walked toward the waiting men. Caleb's whole body screamed to stop him, to grab his gun to fight. But Wade's pistol was still trained on the window, and Lily was still inside, and there was nothing he could do. Nothing. Jesse reached the horses. One of Blackwell's men grabbed his arm and hauled him up onto a saddle. The boy looked back one last time. Goodbye, Pa. The word shattered something in Caleb's chest. Pa. Jesse had called him Pa. And now he was being taken away, and Caleb was just standing there watching it happen. Jesse! Lily's scream came from inside the cabin. The door burst open and she flew across the porch, running toward the horses. Jesse, No, you can't take him. He's my brother. One of the men reached down to grab her. Caleb moved. He didn't think, didn't plan, just moved. His fist connected with the man's jaw before anyone could react. The man toppled from his horse and Caleb was already spinning, reaching for Lily, pulling her behind him. Touch my daughter again, and I'll kill you. Every single one of you. Wade's pistol swung toward him. You just made a big mistake, Thorne. Enough. Blackwell's voice cut through the chaos. We have what we came for. There's no need for additional violence. He looked at Caleb with cold calculation. You have spirit, Mr. Thorne. I respect that. But spirit won't win against money and lawyers and the full weight of the law. Accept your defeat gracefully. He turned his horse and rode away. Wade followed, still grinning. The rest of the men fell in line, and Jesse, small and pale on a stranger's horse, grew smaller and smaller until he disappeared down the trail. Lily collapsed against Caleb's legs, sobbing. Papa, do something. Please, you have to do something. Caleb stood frozen, watching the empty trail. He'd failed. Again. Just like Thomas. Just like Clara. Just like everyone he'd ever tried to protect. He'd failed. The cabin felt hollow without Jesse. Lily refused to eat, refused to talk. She sat in the corner with her knees drawn to her chest, staring at nothing. Caleb paced like a caged animal, his mind churning through options. Go after them. Impossible. 12 armed men, and Jesse was probably already at the mine by now. Get the sheriff. Cole was a good man, but he was one lawman against a company that owned half the territory. Find Judge Ashworth. What could he do? Blackwell had gotten a territorial court to nullify the adoption. Local judges didn't outrank territorial ones. There was no move, no play, no way forward. He'd lost. A knock at the door made him spin, rifle in hand. Caleb, Ruth McAllister's voice. It's me. Let me in. He opened the door. Ruth stood on the porch wrapped in a heavy coat, her face flushed from riding hard. I heard what happened. The whole town's talking about it. Then you know there's nothing to be done. That's not true. She pushed past him into the cabin. There's always something to be done. You just have to find it. Blackwell's got lawyers, got judges in his pocket, got a territorial court writ, which might be fraudulent. Caleb stopped pacing. What? I've been thinking about this since the confrontation at the judge's chambers. Blackwell moves fast. Too fast. He got a territorial court ruling in 3 days. Do you know how long those things usually take? Weeks. Months, sometimes. So either he's got more influence than God himself, or that writ isn't worth the paper it's printed on. Ruth's eyes were bright. Judge Caldwell in Cheyenne. Do you know him? Never met him. Neither have I, but I know someone who has. She pulled a letter from her coat. My brother works at the territorial courthouse. Clerk. Has access to record schedules, everything that comes through. She handed the letter to Caleb. This arrived yesterday. I was coming to show you when I heard about the raid. Caleb unfolded the paper and read. His heart stopped. Caldwell's been in Denver for the past 2 weeks, Ruth said. Medical treatment. He couldn't have signed that writ. He wasn't even in the territory. Caleb looked up. This is proof. This is actual proof that Blackwell forged a court document. It's a start, but proof doesn't matter if no one's willing to act on it. Someone will. They have to. Who the sheriff can't go against the mining company alone. Judge Ashworth's jurisdiction is limited. We need someone with real power, someone outside Blackwell's influence. Caleb's mind raced. The territorial governor. He's 3 days' ride from here. By the time we reach him, Jesse could be... Ruth stopped. Started again. We don't have 3 days. Then we don't wait for the governor. We make enough noise that he has to pay attention. How? Caleb looked at her. At this woman who'd stepped between him and a bullet. Who'd stood up to Wade in the judge's chambers. Who was here now risking everything because she believed in something bigger than herself. Blackwell thinks he can operate in secret, Caleb said slowly. Thinks nobody will challenge him because everyone's too scared. But what if they weren't scared? What if the whole territory knew what he was doing? You're talking about going public. I'm talking about burning his reputation to the ground. Ruth stared at him. Then a slow smile spread across her face. I know a newspaper editor in Cheyenne, Thompson. He's been trying to expose the mining companies for years. Never had enough evidence. She gestured to the letter. Until now. Can we trust him? He published a story about corruption in the Railroad Commission 3 years ago. They threatened his family, burned down his office. He rebuilt and kept writing. Ruth's smile widened. Yeah, we can trust him. Lily's voice came from the corner. What about Jesse? They both turned. The little girl was watching them with red-rimmed eyes. You're making plans. Big plans about governors and newspapers. But what about Jesse? He's at the mine right now. They're hurting him right now. Caleb crossed to her and knelt down. I know, little bird. I know. Then what are you going to do? Everything I can. That's not enough. Lily's voice cracked. He called you Pa, right before they took him. He called you Pa and you let them take him anyway. The words cut deeper than any knife. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. You told me that. You told me that when things get hard, you plant your feet and fight harder. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Were you lying? Lily? He's my brother. She grabbed Caleb's shirt. You made him my brother, and then you let them take him away, and now he's all alone with those bad men, and he thinks nobody's coming for him. He thinks nobody cares enough to fight. Caleb pulled her into his arms. She struggled at first, then collapsed against him, sobbing. I'm coming for him, Caleb whispered. I swear to God, Lily, I'm going to bring your brother home. Promise. Promise. He held her until she cried herself to sleep. Then he looked at Ruth. Can you stay with her? Where are you going? The mine. Ruth's eyes widened. Caleb, that's suicide. They've got dozens of armed guards. You can't just... I'm not going to fight, not yet. I'm going to watch, learn their patterns, find their weaknesses. He grabbed his coat. And I'm going to let Jesse know that I'm coming, that I haven't given up. How? I'll figure it out. He was at the door when Ruth caught his arm. Be careful. I will. I mean it. That boy needs you alive. So does Lily. So does... She stopped, looked away. Just be careful. Caleb met her eyes, held them. I'll be back before dawn. He rode through the darkness following trails he knew by heart. The Blackwell mine compound appeared as a cluster of lights against the black mountains. Guard towers, barracks, the massive head frame over the main shaft, and somewhere in there, Jesse. Caleb dismounted a quarter-mile out and approached on foot, keeping to the shadows. His years as a ranger hadn't rusted. He still knew how to move unseen. The compound was heavily guarded. 4 men at the main gate, 2 in each tower. Patrols walking the perimeter every 15 minutes. But there were gaps. Blind spots where the patrol routes didn't overlap. A section of fence near the slag heap where the guards never bothered to look. Caleb mapped it all in his head. He was about to retreat when he heard it. A child crying. The sound came from a low building near the edge of the compound, the children's barracks, where they kept the young workers who had nowhere else to go. Caleb crept closer. Through a gap in the wooden walls he could see inside. Rows of cots. Small bodies huddled under thin blankets. And Jesse. The boy sat alone in the corner, knees drawn to his chest, face buried in his arms. His shoulders shook with silent sobs. Caleb's heart shattered. He couldn't reach him, couldn't touch him, couldn't let him know he was there without risking everything. But he could leave a sign. He pulled out his knife and carved into the wooden fence post nearest Jesse's barracks. 4 letters. The same 4 letters he'd carved into the doorframe at home when he'd measured Jesse's height. JESS. Then beneath it, coming. He stared at the words for a long moment, then retreated into the darkness. Morning came gray and cold. Jesse woke to shouting, guards yelling, boots thundering across the compound. He stumbled outside with the other children, confused and frightened. "What's happening?" he whispered to the boy next to him. "Don't know. Something's got them riled up." A guard stormed past. "Nobody leaves. Nobody goes near the fence. Anyone caught trying to run gets the whip." Jesse shrank back. But something made him look toward the fence near the barracks. Something carved into the wood. He couldn't read well. Lily had just started teaching him. But he knew those letters. J-E-S-S. His name. And beneath it, coming. Jesse's breath caught. Pa. Pa was coming for him. He wasn't alone. He wasn't forgotten. He wasn't worthless. Pa was coming. Across the compound, Silas Wade stood in Blackwell's office, his face purple with rage. "Someone got into the compound last night. Left a message for the boy. We've got a breach." Blackwell remained calm. "Do we know who?" "Has to be Thorne. Nobody else would risk it." "Then we need to deal with Mr. Thorne more permanently." Blackwell removed his spectacles and cleaned them slowly. "I was hoping to avoid this. It's messy, attracts attention. Want me to handle it?" "Yes, but not here, not at the mine. We don't want to create a martyr." He replaced his spectacles. "Do it somewhere remote. Make it look like an accident, a riding mishap, a fall from a cliff, something that won't raise questions." "And the girl, the daughter?" Blackwell considered. "Leave her. A dead child creates complications, a orphaned one." He shrugged. "She'll be someone else's problem." Wade grinned. "When do you want it done?" "Tonight, before he has a chance to cause any more trouble." "Consider it handled." Wade strode out, already planning. He'd enjoy this. He'd enjoy it very much. Part 5. Lưu ý viết 3 nhăn 500 Channin 4500 từ liên kết liền mạch với các phần trước trong câu chuyện pha hội thoại, tạo thành một câu chuyện liền mạch khi ghép lại. Mỗi phần liền mạch với phần trước, không giới thiệu lại câu chuyện ở đầu phần mới. Liên kết các phần của câu chuyện một cách liền mạch. Sử dụng câu chuyện tiếp giữa các phần. Duy trì chủ đề. Tránh ngắt quãng, đột ngột, không sử dụng gạch đầu dòng hoặc tiêu đề phụ phong cách kể chuyện Mỹ Hoa Kỳ, giống văn giàu cảm xúc chân thực và gần gũi, không mô tả cảnh, tập trung vào hành động, cảm xúc và tâm lý nhân vật. Viết phần 4, đạt điểm 10/10 và bổ sung tiết tấu câu chuyện nhanh, sửa lời AI, kể theo ngôi thứ 3, tăng độ kịch tính, không viết lăn mạn, kết thúc phần không giới thiệu phần sau. Lưu ý trả lời trong mục tin nhắn không nhảy sang mực document mới. 2-3 phút, cần có mini climax và đạt 10-15 mini climax. Mỗi phần cự 10-12 phút, có một twist lớn sâu sắc, đạn xen mini cliffhanger mạnh hơn. Tăng tính tự nhiên cho phản ứng của các nhân vật, thêm nhịp điệu kịch tính thực tế và gần gũi. Mỗi 8-10 phút, cần có móc giữ chân khán giả. Lưu ý không mô tả cảnh và chỉ cần viết nội dung và viết đúng lệnh nhé. Show more 10, me Wayne. Caleb made it halfway home before he realized he was being followed. The sound was subtle, hoofbeats muffled by snow. But his ranger instincts hadn't dulled, and he knew the difference between an echo and a shadow. 3 riders, maybe 4, hanging back just far enough to stay invisible. He didn't speed up, didn't change course, just kept riding steady while his mind raced through options. The cabin was still 2 hours away, too far. They'd make their move before then. The narrow canyon ahead, steep walls on both sides. Perfect place for an ambush, which meant they'd be expecting him to avoid it. Caleb smiled grimly. He rode straight into the canyon, the walls closed in around him. His breath misted in the cold air. Every shadow could hide a killer. He was halfway through when the first shot cracked the silence. Caleb threw himself from the saddle as the bullet whined past his ear. He hit the ground, rolling rifle already in his hands. "Thorne," Wade's voice echoed off the canyon walls. "Should have stayed home with your little girl." Another shot. Closer this time. Rock chips sprayed Caleb's face. He scrambled behind a boulder, counting muzzle flashes. 3 shooters. High ground on both sides. Classic crossfire formation. They'd planned this well. "Nothing personal," Wade called. "Just business. Hold still and I'll make it quick." Caleb didn't answer. He was already moving using the rocks for cover, working his way toward the canyon's narrowest point. A bullet kicked up snow near his boot. Another ricocheted off the boulder beside his head. He fired back blindly, not aiming to hit, just to make them duck. It worked. The shooting paused for half a second. Caleb ran. 30 feet. 20. 10. He dove behind a fallen tree trunk just as the gunfire resumed. Splinters exploded around him. "He's pinned!" One of Wade's men shouted. "Move in!" Caleb pressed his back against the log and checked his rifle. 4 rounds left. 3 shooters. No room for error. Footsteps crunched through snow. Coming closer. He waited. A shadow fell across the log. Caleb exploded upward. His rifle butt connected with the man's jaw. Bone cracked. The man went down hard. Caleb grabbed his pistol before it hit the ground. Spun. Fired. The second shooter staggered back, clutching his shoulder. 2 down. Where was Wade? The answer came from behind him. The cold press of a gun barrel against his skull. "Drop it!" Caleb froze. "I said drop it. Now!" He let the pistol fall. Wade circled around to face him, keeping the gun trained on Caleb's head. His grin was ugly in the fading light. "Thought you were smart, didn't you? Thought you could outrun us. Worth a try." "Well, it failed." Wade's finger tightened on the trigger. "Any last words? Want me to pass a message to that pretty little daughter of yours?" "Yeah." Caleb met his eyes. "Duck." Wade frowned. "What?" The shot came from behind. Wade's eyes went wide. He looked down at the blood spreading across his chest, then back up at Caleb with an expression of pure disbelief. He dropped. Ruth McAllister lowered her rifle, hands shaking. "I told you to be careful," she said. Caleb stared at her. "How did you—" "Followed you. Had a bad feeling." She was pale but steady. "Guess I was right." "Lily." "Sheriff Cole's with her. I sent for him before I left." Caleb looked down at Wade's body. The man's eyes were still open, frozen in that final moment of surprise. "Is he dead?" Ruth walked over and checked his pulse. "Not yet, but close." "Good." "Good. Means he can talk." Caleb knelt beside Wade and grabbed the front of his coat. "Hey, look at me. Wade, look at me." Wade's eyes focused. Barely. "The writ," Caleb said. "The territorial court writ. It was a forgery, wasn't it?" Wade laughed, weak and wet. Blood bubbled at his lips. "Everything's a forgery. Blackwell's been buying judges for years." "Can you prove it?" "Safe. His office, all the records." Wade coughed. More blood. "Won't matter. You can't stop him. Nobody can." "Watch me." Wade's eyes flickered. "The boy, Jesse. He's scheduled for the deep tunnels, tomorrow morning. Kids who go down there." Another cough. "They don't come back up." Caleb's blood went cold. "What do you mean they don't come back?" "Bad air. Cave-ins. Blackwell doesn't care. Cheaper to lose them than fix the problems." Wade's hand clutched Caleb's sleeve. I wasn't always—" His grip went slack. His eyes went empty. Silas Wade was dead. Caleb stood slowly. His whole body felt numb. "The deep tunnels," Ruth whispered. "I've heard stories. Workers who went down and never came out. The company said they ran away, but everyone knew. How long do we have? If they're sending him down tomorrow morning," she calculated, 12 hours, maybe less. Then we've got 12 hours to storm a mining compound with dozens of armed guards. We can't do that alone. No. Caleb looked at her. We can't. Then what? Wade said Blackwell keeps records in his safe. Proof of everything. Forgeries, bribes, probably worse. Caleb's jaw tightened. We get those records, we can bring him down, but we need help. Who? Everyone. Caleb grabbed Wade's horse. Everyone in Silver Creek who's ever been hurt by that man. Every family who lost someone in those mines. Every widow, every orphan, every person who's been too scared to fight back. He mounted up. Tonight, we give them a reason to stop being scared. They rode through the darkness, stopping at every homestead, every cabin, every farm along the way. The Hendersons, who'd lost their oldest son to a tunnel collapse. The Murphys, whose daughter had worked the slag pile until she couldn't walk anymore. Old Tom Patterson, who'd watched his brother die from lung sickness after 20 years in Blackwell's mines. One by one they answered the door. One by one they listened. And one by one they grabbed their guns. By the time they reached Silver Creek, there were 30 of them. Farmers and ranchers and shopkeepers. Men and women who'd lived in fear for too long. Sheriff Cole met them at the edge of town. What the hell is this? A posse, Caleb said. The legal kind. You can't just... Wade's dead. He confessed before he died. Blackwell's been forging court documents, bribing judges, killing workers he considers expendable. Caleb dismounted. There's a boy at that mine who's going to die tomorrow morning if we don't stop it. My son. Cole stared at him. Your son. Jesse. The adoption was legal. Everything Blackwell did to take him was fraud. Caleb stepped closer. I know you're scared, Marcus. Everybody is. But this is your chance to do something about it. To stop being scared and start being the law. Cole was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to his deputy. Go wake up Judge Ashworth. Tell him we need warrants. Every charge we can think of. Murder, kidnapping, fraud, assault. The deputy ran. Cole looked at Caleb. If we do this and it goes wrong, we all hang. If we don't do this, my boy dies. Other people's children die. And Blackwell keeps winning. Caleb held out his hand. You with me? Cole gripped it. God help us. I'm with you. Judge Ashworth arrived within the hour, still pulling on his coat. He listened to the evidence. The letter proving Judge Caldwell was in Denver. Wade's deathbed confession. The stories from 30 witnesses about Blackwell's crimes. When they finished, his face was gray. This is enough, he said quietly. More than enough. I'll write the warrants. How many? All of them. Edgar Blackwell. Every foreman at that mine. Every judge we can prove he bribed. Ashworth's hand shook as he reached for his pen. I've been waiting years for this. Praying someone would be brave enough to bring real evidence. Then let's finish it. The warrants took an hour to draft. Ashworth worked feverishly, pausing only to ask clarifying questions. When the last one was signed and sealed, he handed the stack to Sheriff Cole. You've got the legal authority now. Whatever happens at that mine is justified. Cole distributed the warrants to his deputies. Everyone knows the plan. Nods all around. Then let's ride. 50 strong now. Deputies, volunteers, ordinary people who'd found their courage. They reached the mining compound as the first gray light of dawn touched the mountains. The guards saw them coming. Shouts echoed across the compound. Men scrambled for weapons, but they were too late. Cole led the main force through the front gate, while Caleb and a smaller group circled to the rear. The element of surprise was everything. Caleb Thorne. Blackwell's voice rang out from the office building. I should have known you'd be behind this. Caleb ignored him. He was already moving toward the children's barracks, Ruth and 3 others covering his flanks. A guard stepped into his path, raised a rifle. Ruth shot it out of his hands. Move! The guard ran. Caleb burst through the barracks door. Rows of cots. Frightened children staring at him with wide eyes. Jesse. Jesse Thorne. Pa. The voice came from the corner. Jesse struggled to his feet, thin and pale, but alive. Alive. Caleb crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled him into his arms. I knew you'd come. Jesse sobbed. I saw the message. I knew you'd come. I told you, family doesn't give up on each other. They were going to send me down. Tomorrow morning. The deep tunnels. They said, I know, it's over now. You're safe. Lily is Lily. She's fine. She's waiting for you. Jesse clung to him, shaking. I thought I'd never see you again. I thought. Stop thinking. Caleb pulled back and looked at his son's face. Bruised, thin, but alive. Let's go home. They emerged from the barracks into chaos. Sheriff Cole had Blackwell in handcuffs reading charges, while the mining magnate sputtered protests about lawyers and connections and how everyone involved would regret this. But the tide had turned. Workers were emerging from the tunnels, blinking in the dawn light. Families were rushing through the gates, searching for children they'd thought lost forever. And everywhere the people of Silver Creek stood, with their weapons ready, no longer afraid. Ruth found Caleb by the barracks door. It's over, she said. Not quite. Caleb watched as Blackwell was loaded into a wagon. He'll have lawyers, connections. This fight isn't finished. Maybe not, but it started. She looked at Jesse, still pressed against Caleb's side. That's what matters. Caleb nodded slowly. Then he did something he hadn't done since Clara died. He smiled. Let's go home. The ride back to Pine Ridge took forever and no time at all. Jesse sat in front of Caleb, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, silent but present. Real. Alive. Halfway there, they met another group on the trail. Sheriff Cole's wife, Martha, riding hard. And beside her, Papa Jesse. Lily launched herself from her horse and ran toward them, nearly knocking Jesse off Duchess in her desperation to reach him. You came back. You really came back. Told you I would, Jesse whispered. Told you I'd find a way. You didn't find anything. Papa found you. Papa saved you. We saved each other. Lily hugged him so hard he couldn't breathe. He didn't complain. Caleb dismounted and stood watching his children. His children. Both of them. Ruth appeared at his side. Thank you, he said quietly. For everything. For following me. For shooting Wade. For all of it. You'd have done the same. Maybe. But I didn't have to. You were there. She was quiet for a moment. Then, what happens now? Now we rebuild. Let Jesse heal. Let Lily heal. Try to be the family they deserve. And the trial, Blackwell's lawyers. We'll handle it when it comes. Together. Ruth looked at him. Really looked. Together. If you're willing. Something softened in her expression. Something that had been guarded for a long time. I might be willing. Might. Ask me again when this is over, when the dust settles and we can think straight. Fair enough. Caleb held out his hand. For now, ride back with us. Lily's been asking about you. Jesse, too. Ruth took his hand, held it. I'd like that. They rode the rest of the way to Pine Ridge together. When the cabin came into view, Jesse made a sound, small and broken and full of wonder. We're home, he whispered. Yeah, Caleb said. We're home. Inside, the fire was still burning. Martha had kept it going while they were gone. The table was set with food. Clean clothes were laid out for Jesse. Everything exactly as they'd left it. Except nothing was the same. Lily dragged Jesse to the table and started piling food on his plate. Ruth helped Martha put away supplies. Caleb stood in the doorway watching. His family. His strange, cobbled-together, impossible family. Pa. Jesse's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Yeah. I'm sorry. For giving up. For going with them without fighting. I should have. You saved our lives." Caleb crossed to the table and sat beside him. "If you'd fought, Wade would have shot Lily, shot me. You understood that. You sacrificed yourself to protect us." "I was scared." "Being scared doesn't mean you weren't brave. It means you were brave anyway." Jesse stared at his plate. "They told me things, at the mine, said I was worthless, said nobody would come for me because nobody wanted me, said I was just like all the other throwaway kids. They lied. I know that now, but for a while—" He looked up. "For a while I believed them. And now—" Jesse's jaw tightened. "Now I know who my family is. Now I know what I'm worth." He met Caleb's eyes. "I'm worth fighting for." "Damn right you are." Lily appeared beside them, holding a piece of paper. "Jesse, look. I made this while you were gone." It was a drawing, crude but recognizable. 3 figures standing in front of a cabin. A tall man, a little girl with yellow hair, a thin boy between them. Underneath, in Lily's careful handwriting, "Our family." Jesse's eyes went bright. "You drew me." "Course I did. You're my brother. Brothers go in families' pictures." "But I was gone. You didn't know if I'd come back." "Yes, I did." Lily's voice was fierce. "Papa promised. And Papa always keeps his promises." Jesse looked at Caleb. Caleb looked at Jesse. Something passed between them. Understanding. Trust. The unspoken bond of people who'd walked through fire together. "Always," Caleb said. Jesse smiled. Really smiled. The first real smile Caleb had seen from him. "Always," he repeated. Outside, the sun climbed higher. The snow sparkled. The mountains stood silent and eternal. And inside the cabin at Pine Ridge, a family sat down to breakfast together. Not perfect, not complete, not without scars, but together. Ruth caught Caleb's eye across the table, raised an eyebrow. He nodded slightly. Later, they'd deal with trials and lawyers and the long process of bringing Blackwell to justice. Later, they'd figure out what came next for all of them. But right now, in this moment, they had everything they needed, each other. Caleb rode through the night with Wade's confession burning in his mind. The deep tunnels. Tomorrow morning. Kids who go down there don't come back up. He had 12 hours. Maybe less. Ruth kept pace beside him, her face pale but determined. Behind them, Wade's body lay draped across his own horse, evidence of what Blackwell was willing to do. "We can't storm the mine alone," Ruth said. "Even with the sheriff, they've got too many men." "I know." "Then what's the plan?" "We don't storm it. We burn it down. Not the mine. Blackwell's reputation, his protection. Everything that keeps people too scared to fight back." "How?" Caleb pulled Duchess to a stop. "Wade said Blackwell keeps records in his safe. Every forged document, every bribed judge, every worker who disappeared. If we can get those records, we'd have proof, real proof. Enough to hang him." Ruth's eyes narrowed. "And how do we get into his safe?" "I don't, but I know someone who might." They reached Silver Creek as the first hint of gray touched the eastern sky. The town was quiet. Too quiet. Word of Wade's death hadn't spread yet, but it would soon. Caleb tied Duchess outside the sheriff's office and went inside. Cole was awake, sitting at his desk, with a cup of cold coffee and dark circles under his eyes. "Thorne, Jesus, you look like hell." "Feel worse." Caleb dropped into the chair across from him. "Wade's dead." Cole's coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth. "What?" "Ambushed me on the canyon road. Him and 2 others. Ruth shot him before he could finish me." "Ruth McAllister." "Long story." Caleb leaned forward. "Before he died, Wade talked. Blackwell's sending Jesse to the deep tunnels tomorrow morning. You know what that means." Cole's face went gray. "The killing tunnels. That's what the workers call them. Bad air, unstable rock. The company sends troublemakers down there when they want them gone permanently." My son isn't dying in a hole because some rich bastard decided he was inconvenient. What do you want me to do? Your job. Caleb's voice hardened. Wade confessed to attempted murder. He also said Blackwell's got records in his safe. Proof of everything. Forgeries, bribes dead workers the company covered up. That's enough for a warrant. Then write one. Cole hesitated. Caleb, if I go after Blackwell directly, he'll come after you, I know. That's why we're not doing this alone. Who else is there? Everyone. Caleb stood. Everyone in this town who's lost someone to that mine. Everyone who's been too scared to speak up. Tonight we give them a reason to stop being scared. Cole stared at him for a long moment. Then he reached for his pen. I'll have the warrant ready in an hour. What are you going to do? Wake some people up. The first stop was the Henderson farm, 3 miles outside town. Martha Henderson answered the door with a shotgun in her hands and fear in her eyes. When she saw Caleb, the fear turned to confusion. Mr. Thorne, it's not even dawn. I know. I need to talk to you and your husband. About what? About your son. About what really happened to him in that mine. Her face went still. That was 2 years ago. And you've been living with it ever since, afraid to speak up, afraid of what Blackwell might do if you made trouble. You don't know what we've been through. No. But I know what I'm going through right now. Blackwell took my boy. Took him right out of my home with a forged court order. He's going to kill him tomorrow if I don't stop it. Martha's grip on the shotgun tightened. Your boy. Jesse. I adopted him 2 weeks ago, legal and proper. Blackwell didn't care. He's got judges in his pocket, lawmen who look the other way. He thinks he can do whatever he wants because nobody's brave enough to stop him. And you think you can? I think we can. Together. Caleb met her eyes. I'm asking for help, Mrs. Henderson. Not for me. For every child who's going to die in that mine if we don't do something. Martha was silent for a long moment. Then she stepped back from the door. You'd better come inside. Her husband was awake by the time they reached the kitchen. He listened without interruption as Caleb explained the situation. When Caleb finished, Tom Henderson's jaw was tight. Our boy was 15 when they sent him down the deep tunnels. Said he'd been stealing. He hadn't. He'd just asked too many questions about safety. I'm sorry. They sent his body back in a canvas bag. Told us it was an accident. Cave-in. Tom's voice cracked. He was our only child. Then help me make sure no other family loses their children like you lost yours. Tom looked at his wife. Something passed between them. What do you need was witnesses. People willing to testify about what Blackwell's done. And fighters. People willing to ride on that mine and take it back. You're talking about war. I'm talking about justice. There's a difference. Tom stood slowly. I'll get my rifle. By noon, Caleb had visited 12 homesteads. 9 said yes. 3 were too scared. He didn't blame them. He met Ruth and Sheriff Cole at the church where Reverend Crane had agreed to let them gather. 23 volunteers, Ruth reported, plus the sheriff and 3 deputies. 27 against Blackwell's guards, 50, maybe 60 men. The odds are bad. They've always been bad. That's never stopped people who believed in something. The church door opened. Judge Ashworth walked in, looking like he hadn't slept in days. I've finished the warrants, he said, handing a stack of papers to Cole. Arrest warrants for Edgar Blackwell. Every foreman at the mine. Every judge we can prove he bribed. He paused. Including Judge Caldwell in Cheyenne. Cole's eyebrows rose. Caldwell. My brother's letter proves he couldn't have signed that writ. He was in Denver. Blackwell forged a territorial court document. Ashworth's voice shook with barely controlled rage. That's not just fraud. That's an attack on the entire legal system. Can we get Caldwell to testify? I've already sent a writer. If he's the man I think he is, he'll want blood. Caleb nodded. What about the territorial governor? Notified, but he's 3 days away. Whatever happens tonight, we're on our own. Then we make it count. The planning took hours. Cole laid out what he knew about the mine's defenses. Guard rotations, blind spots, the layout of the compound. Ruth contributed information from workers she'd talked to over the years. Secret entrances, places where the fence was weak, which guards could be bribed and which were loyal to Blackwell. By sunset, they had a plan. It wasn't a good plan. Too many variables. Too many things that could go wrong. But it was the only plan they had. We move at midnight, Caleb said. 2 groups. Cole leads the main force through the front gate. I take a smaller team around the back to reach the children's barracks. And Blackwell, he's mine. Ruth caught his arm as the others dispersed. Caleb, be careful. Always am. No, you're not. You're reckless and stubborn, and you take risks that would kill a normal man. Her grip tightened. Don't die tonight. Those children need you. Lily needs you. What about you? She didn't answer, just looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Then she turned and walked away. Caleb watched her go, something stirring in his chest that he hadn't felt in 4 years. Not now, he told himself. Focus. Jesse first, everything else after. He went to check on Lily. She was with Martha Cole at the sheriff's house, supposedly safe. But when Caleb walked in, she was sitting at the window staring into the darkness. You're going to get him, aren't you? Yeah, little bird, I'm going to get him. What if something goes wrong? Caleb knelt beside her. Then the people here will take care of you. Sheriff Cole, his wife, Ruth. I don't want them. I want you. I want Jesse. I know. Promise me you'll come back. Both of you. Caleb hesitated. Promises were dangerous things. They could break your heart when they couldn't be kept. But his daughter was looking at him with Clara's eyes, and he couldn't refuse her anything. I promise. She threw her arms around his neck. I love you, Papa. I love you too, little bird. More than anything. He held her until she fell asleep. Then he went to war. The ride to the mine took 2 hours. 27 riders moving through darkness, guided only by starlight and determination. Caleb led the smaller group, Ruth, Tom Henderson, and 4 others along the ridge that overlooked the compound. Below, lanterns flickered. Guards walked their rounds. Somewhere in there, Jesse was waiting, hoping, maybe praying. There. Ruth pointed to a section of fence near the slag heap. That's the weak point. 2 guards, but they rotate every 30 minutes. We've got a window. Caleb checked his rifle. When the main force hits the front gate, we move. And if we get separated, get Jesse out. That's all that matters. Get him out and get him to safety. Ruth nodded. Her hand brushed his in the darkness. Neither of them spoke. Below, the compound waited. Midnight came. A signal flare arced across the sky, Cole's signal. The front gate exploded with gunfire and shouting. Now, Caleb said. They moved. Down the ridge across the open ground toward the weak point in the fence. The guards there had already run toward the main gate drawn by the chaos. Caleb cut through the wire with borrowed clippers. Ruth slipped through first, then the others. The children's barracks was 50 yards away. They were halfway there when the shooting started. Not from the front gate. From behind them. Caleb spun. 3 guards had spotted them, rifles raised. Down. He tackled Ruth as the first shots rang out. They hit the ground, rolling, scrambling for cover behind a pile of slag. Tom Henderson wasn't fast enough. A bullet caught him in the shoulder. He went down hard. Tom! Caleb started toward him. Don't! Tom shouted. Get the boy, I'll hold them off. He raised his rifle with his good arm and fired. Caleb made a choice, the hardest choice. He ran. Ruth was beside him, matching his pace. The barracks door was right there. 20 feet. 10. A guard stepped out of the shadows. Caleb didn't slow down. He hit the man at full speed, driving him backward, slamming him against the wall. The guard's head cracked against the wood and he went limp. Ruth kicked open the barracks door. Inside, children screamed. Dozens of them cowering on their cots, terrified by the sounds of battle outside. "Jesse!" Caleb shouted. "Jesse Thorne!" "Pa!" The voice came from the far corner. Jesse struggled to his feet, thin and pale but alive. Caleb crossed the room and pulled him into his arms. "I knew you'd come." Jesse gasped. "I saw the message on the fence. I knew you'd come." "I told you, family doesn't give up. They were going to send me down tomorrow. The deep tunnels, they said. I know, it's over now." But it wasn't over. The barracks door burst open. A figure stepped through, silhouetted against the flames now rising from the front gate. Edgar Blackwell. He held a pistol in one hand and a lantern in the other. His face was twisted with rage. "You think you've won. You think any of this matters. Put the gun down, Blackwell." Caleb positioned himself between the man and Jesse. "It's over. Cole has warrants. The evidence is coming out. Everything you've done. Evidence can be destroyed. Witnesses can be silenced." Blackwell raised the pistol. "And heroes can die." He aimed at Caleb's heart. Jesse moved. The boy threw himself forward, knocking Caleb aside just as Blackwell fired. The bullet meant for Caleb caught Jesse in the shoulder. He went down. "No!" Caleb's scream tore through the barracks. He scrambled to Jesse's side. Blood was spreading across the boy's shirt, dark and wet. "Jesse! Jesse, look at me!" The boy's eyes were glassy with shock. "Pa, I'm here. I'm right here. Did I do good?" "You did perfect. You did so good." Blackwell laughed. "How touching. The trash dies protecting the fool who tried to save him." Caleb looked up. Something in his expression made Blackwell stop laughing. "Ruth." "I've got him." Ruth knelt beside Jesse, pressing her hands against the wound. "Go." Caleb stood. He didn't reach for his gun. Didn't need to. "You know what I did before I came to Wyoming." His voice was quiet, calm, terrifying. "I was a Texas Ranger, 15 years. I've killed more men than I can count. Some deserved it, some didn't. I stopped because I was tired of the blood." He took a step forward. Blackwell raised his pistol. His hand was shaking. "Stay back." "But you know what I've learned tonight. Some men deserve killing. Some men are so rotten, so corrupt that letting them live is worse than murder." Another step. I said stay back. "You've killed children, Blackwell. Worked them to death in your tunnels and called it business. You've destroyed families, bought judges, forged documents. And now you've shot my son." Blackwell pulled the trigger. Click. Empty. The color drained from his face. Caleb crossed the remaining distance in 2 strides. His fist connected with Blackwell's jaw. The man went down hard, crashing into the wooden floor. Caleb stood over him. "You're going to prison. You're going to stand trial. And then you're going to hang." Blackwell looked up at him, blood streaming from his mouth. "You can't prove anything." "I don't have to. Wade already did. And you're safe. The one with all the records." Caleb smiled, cold and hard. "Sheriff Cole's opening it right now." For the first time, real fear showed in Blackwell's eyes. "You're lying." "Am I?" The barracks door opened. Sheriff Cole walked in, a stack of papers in his hands. "Got it all," he said. "Forgeries, bribery records, a list of every worker who disappeared in the deep tunnels. Enough to hang him 10 times over." Blackwell's face crumbled. No, this isn't, you can't." "Shut up." Cole pulled out handcuffs. "Edgar Blackwell, you're under arrest for murder, kidnapping, fraud, and about 40 other charges I'll figure out later." He dragged Blackwell to his feet and pushed him toward the door. Caleb turned back to Jesse. Ruth had torn her petticoat into bandages. The bleeding had slowed. "He needs a doctor," she said. But he'll live. You hear that, Jesse? Caleb knelt beside his son. You're going to be fine. Jesse's eyes focused. We won? Yeah, we won. So I can come home now for real. Caleb gathered him into his arms, careful of the wound. For real. Forever. Nobody's ever taking you away again. Jesse smiled. Weak, but genuine. Good. 'Cause I'm real tired of being scared. Me too, son. Me too. Outside, the fighting had stopped. Blackwell's guards were surrendering, realizing their boss was finished. The workers were emerging from their barracks, blinking in the torchlight, hardly daring to believe what was happening. And children were running to their rescuers, crying and laughing, and asking for their parents. Tom Henderson sat against a fence post, his shoulder bandaged, watching it all with tears streaming down his face. We did it, he said as Caleb passed. We actually did it. You did it, all of you. It won't bring my boy back. No. But maybe it means no other father has to lose his son the way you lost yours. Tom nodded slowly. That's something. That's worth fighting for. It's worth everything. Dawn broke over the mountains as they rode back toward Silver Creek. Caleb held Jesse in front of him, the boy's head resting against his chest. Ruth rode beside them close enough that their horses sometimes brushed. Behind them, Sheriff Cole led a procession of freed workers, rescued children, and one very defeated mining magnate in chains. It wasn't over. There would be trials, testimony, lawyers trying to save what could be saved, but the worst was past. And ahead of them, somewhere in the morning light, Lily was waiting. Pa! Jesse's voice was barely a whisper. Yeah. I'm sorry I got shot. You saved my life. Don't apologize for that. I didn't want you to die. I couldn't let you die. You're the first person who ever... He trailed off. Ever what? Ever came back for me. Everybody else left. Ma. Pa. Everybody. But you came back. Caleb's arms tightened around him. I'll always come back. That's what fathers do. Jesse was quiet for a moment. Then, I love you, Pa. The words hit Caleb like a thunderbolt. 4 years since he'd heard those words from anyone but Lily. 4 years since Clara had whispered them with her last breath. He'd thought that part of his heart was dead. He was wrong. I love you too, son. More than you know. They rode on toward home. They reached Silver Creek as the sun broke fully over the mountains. The town had transformed overnight. Word had spread faster than wildfire. People lined the main street, watching in stunned silence as Sheriff Cole led the procession through. Edgar Blackwell in chains, his foreman stumbling behind him, dozens of freed workers, children who hadn't seen sunlight in months. And at the front, Caleb Thorne holding his wounded son. Papa! Lily's voice cut through the crowd. She broke free from Martha Cole and ran toward them, her small legs pumping furiously. Caleb dismounted carefully, keeping Jesse steady in his arms. He knelt just as Lily crashed into them both. You came back. You both came back. Told you we would, little bird. Jesse's hurt. Why is Jesse hurt? What happened to him? He was very brave. He saved my life. Lily pulled back to look at her brother. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice was fierce. You shouldn't have gotten shot. That was stupid. Jesse managed a weak smile. Couldn't let Pa die. You need him more than you need me. I need you both, dummy. She grabbed his hand. Don't ever do something like that again. I'll try not to. Doc Morrison pushed through the crowd, his black bag already open. Bring him inside, now. I need to see that wound. They carried Jesse to the doctor's office. Ruth appeared beside Caleb, her face pale with exhaustion, but her eyes bright. The children from the mine. We need to find their families. Most of them don't have families. That's why they were there. Then we find them new ones. Her jaw set. No child goes back to the streets, not after tonight. Caleb looked at her. This woman who'd killed a man to save him. who'd ridden into battle without hesitation, who'd held his son's wound closed with her bare hands while the world burned around them. "Thank you," he said, "for everything." "You keep saying that." "Because I keep meaning it." Something passed between them. Unspoken, but understood. "Go be with your son," Ruth said softly. "We'll talk later." He went. Doc Morrison worked for 2 hours. The bullet had passed clean through Jesse's shoulder, missing bone and major blood vessels. A miracle, the doctor said. An inch to the left and the boy would have bled out before reaching town. He'll need rest, lots of it, no heavy lifting for at least 2 months, and he needs to eat, build his strength back up. He'll get whatever he needs. Morrison looked at Caleb over his spectacles. "You know, when I first heard about this adoption, I thought you were crazy. Taking in a street kid with that kind of history, asking for trouble. And now I think you might be the sanest man in this territory." Morrison packed his instruments. That boy would have died tonight if he hadn't jumped in front of that bullet. He did it without thinking, without hesitation. That's not something you can teach. That's love. Caleb looked at Jesse sleeping peacefully on the examination table. "Yeah," he said quietly. "It is." The next 3 days blurred together. Jesse slept, mostly waking only to eat and drink and reassure himself that the nightmare was really over. Lily refused to leave his side, curling up on a chair beside his bed, holding his hand while he slept. Caleb handled the endless stream of visitors, questions, demands. Sheriff Cole needed statements. Judge Ashworth needed testimony. The territorial prosecutor who'd arrived from Cheyenne on the second day needed everything in writing. And then there were the families. Parents who'd thought their children dead. Wives who'd given up hope of seeing their husbands again. Brothers and sisters separated by Blackwell's cruelty, finally reunited. Each reunion broke something in Caleb's chest. Each one healed something too. On the third morning, Jesse was strong enough to sit up. "Pa, right here. What's going to happen to Mr. Blackwell?" "He's going to trial. The territorial court. Everything he did is going to come out. The forgeries, the bribes, the workers who died in those tunnels. Will he hang? Probably." Jesse was quiet for a moment. "Good." Caleb sat on the edge of the bed. "You don't have to feel guilty about that." "I don't. Is that wrong, that I want him to die? After what he did to you? After what he did to all those other kids?" Caleb shook his head. "No, that's not wrong. That's human. The other boys at the mine, the ones who didn't make it out, do you think they'd want him dead too? I think they'd want to be remembered. I think they'd want their deaths to mean something. Do they mean something? They mean Blackwell can never hurt anyone again. They mean the mines will have to change. They mean every child in this territory is a little safer because of what happened here." Caleb took Jesse's hand. "That doesn't bring them back. Nothing can. But it matters. It has to matter." Jesse nodded slowly. "I dream about them sometimes. The kids who didn't make it. I see their faces." "That's going to happen for a while, maybe always, but it gets easier to carry. I promise." "How do you know?" "Because I carry my own ghosts. My sister, my wife, other people I couldn't save." Caleb's voice roughened. "You learn to live with them, to let them make you better instead of tearing you apart." "Will you help me? Learn, I mean?" "Every day, for as long as you need." Jesse's grip tightened on his father's hand. "I'm glad you found me, Pa, in the market that day. I'm glad Lily asked that question." "Me too, son. Me too." The trial began 2 weeks later. The territorial courtroom was packed. Journalists from 3 states, officials from the governor's office, families of victims who'd traveled hundreds of miles for the chance to watch justice happen. Edgar Blackwell sat at the defendant's table. His expensive suit wrinkled his face gray. The arrogance that had defined him was gone, replaced by the hollow look of a man who knew he was finished. Caleb testified on the second day. He told the court everything: finding Jesse in the market, the adoption, the forged writs, The ambush in the canyon, the raid on the mine. Jesse taking a bullet meant for him. When he finished, the prosecutor asked one final question. Mr. Thorne, why did you do all this? Risk your life, your daughter's safety, everything you had, for a boy you'd known barely 2 weeks. Caleb looked at Blackwell, then at Jesse, sitting in the gallery with Lily and Ruth. Because somebody had to, he said. Because children were dying and nobody was stopping it. Because my daughter asked me a question in a market and I couldn't pretend I didn't hear it. What question was that? She asked if we could buy that boy. She didn't mean it the way it sounds. She just saw someone suffering and wanted to help. That's what children do before the world teaches them not to care. He paused. I spent 4 years teaching my daughter that caring too much was dangerous, that the smart thing was to keep your head down and protect your own. Then Jesse came along, and I realized I'd been teaching her how to survive, not how to live. There's a difference. And what is that difference, Mr. Thorne? Surviving means you're still breathing. Living means you're still fighting, for yourself, for the people you love, for the ones who can't fight for themselves. He met the jury's eyes. I chose to live, and I'd make the same choice again. The courtroom was silent. Then from somewhere in the gallery, someone started clapping. Another person joined. Then another. Within seconds, the whole room was on its feet. Applause thundering off the walls. The judge banged his gavel, but he was smiling. Justice had spoken. Edgar Blackwell was convicted on 37 counts. Murder, kidnapping, fraud, forgery, child endangerment, conspiracy. The list went on. The sentence death by hanging to be carried out in 30 days. When the verdict was read, Blackwell's face went white. He turned to look at Caleb, and for just a moment, something like recognition flickered in his eyes. He'd been beaten. Not by lawyers or judges or politicians, by a rancher, a widow, and a scared little boy who'd refused to give up. The guards led him away. Caleb felt Ruth's hand slip into his. It's over, she whispered. Is it? The trial is. The fighting. All of it. What about everything else? She looked at him. What do you mean? I mean us. Whatever this is. He gestured between them. You told me to ask you again when the dust settled. The dust has settled. Ruth was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. Ask me. Ruth McAllister, will you let me court you properly? Dinners and dances and all the things I haven't done in 4 years. Is that what you want? I want to find out what we could be, if you're willing. She squeezed his hand. I'm willing. Yeah. Her smile widened. But you should know I don't come alone. I've got 2 children of my own. It would be a lot to take on. I've already got 2. What's 2 more? You're serious. About you, dead serious. She laughed, a bright surprised sound that made his chest ache in the best possible way. Then I suppose you'd better meet them properly. Sunday dinner at my place. I'll be there. Bring the children. All of them. All of them. Spring came early to the Wyoming mountains. The snow melted. The creek ran high with fresh water. New grass pushed up through the brown remnants of winter. And at Pine Ridge the Thorne family grew. Lily and Jesse had settled into their roles as siblings with surprising ease. They fought like cats over small things and stood together like wolves against anything that threatened either of them. Jesse's shoulder healed clean. He'd have a scar, Doc Morrison said, but scars were stories, and Jesse had plenty of those worth telling. Caleb taught him to ride properly, to shoot straight, to read the weather in the clouds. Lily taught him to read words patiently, sounding out letters until they became sentences, sentences becoming stories, stories becoming worlds. And Ruth became a constant presence. Sunday dinners turned into weekday visits. Her children, Sarah and Michael, played with Lily and Jesse, while the adults talked and laughed and planned. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. There were nightmares. Days when Jesse couldn't get out of bed, when the memories of the mine pressed too heavy on his chest. Days when Caleb looked at his son and saw every child he hadn't been able to save, every ghost he still carried. But they got through it. Together. One evening in late April, Caleb found Jesse sitting on the porch, staring at the mountains. Room for one more. Jesse scooted over. Always. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the kind of silence that only came between people who trusted each other completely. Pa. Yeah. Do you ever think about what would have happened if Lily hadn't seen me that day in the market? Sometimes. I'd be dead by now, I know that. Would have frozen that first winter, or starved, or gotten caught by Wade and sent down the deep tunnels. Jesse's voice was steady. But I also think about the other kids, the ones who didn't get found, the ones nobody asked about. There's a lot of them. Too many. Jesse turned to look at him. What if we did something about it? What do you mean? The mine's closed now, Blackwell's dead. But there are other mines, other companies doing the same thing, other kids nobody's looking for. Caleb studied his son's face, the determination there, the fire. What are you suggesting? I don't know exactly, but you were a ranger. You know how to find people, how to fight. And I know what it's like to be one of those throwaway kids, between us. Jesse shrugged. Maybe we could help. Find the ones who are lost. Give them what you gave me. A family? A chance. That's all most of them need. Just a chance. Caleb was quiet for a long moment. He thought about Clara, who'd never turned away from anyone in need. He thought about Rebecca, the sister he couldn't save. He thought about all the children at the mine, the ones who'd made it out, and the ones who hadn't. It would be dangerous, he said finally. Companies like Blackwell's don't like people interfering with their business. I know. We'd make enemies, powerful ones. We already have. It would mean putting everything at risk. The ranch, our safety, maybe our lives. Jesse met his eyes. Is that a no? Caleb looked at his son. This boy who'd been starving in a market 2 months ago, who'd faced down killers and taken a bullet for his father, who'd lost everything and somehow found the strength to keep going. No, he said. It's a yes. Jesse's face lit up. Really? Really, but we do it smart. We plan. We build alliances. We don't go charging in half-cocked like I did with Blackwell. Learned that lesson, did you? Almost got killed. Almost got you killed. Yeah, I learned it. So we're really doing this. We're really doing this. Caleb put his arm around Jesse's shoulders. But first we finish this season's planting, and you finish learning to read. And we have that dinner with Ruth's family next week. And after that we see what kind of trouble we can find. Jesse grinned. I like the sound of that. Thought you might. They sat together watching the sun sink behind the mountains. Father and son. Bound not by blood, but by something stronger. The door opened behind them. What are you two conspiring about? Ruth stepped onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. The future, Caleb said. Sounds ominous. Sounds hopeful, actually. She raised an eyebrow. Care to share? Caleb looked at Jesse. Jesse nodded. Come sit with us, Caleb said. We've got some ideas we'd like to run by you. Ruth settled onto the porch beside them. Her hand found Caleb's. Lily appeared in the doorway. What's going on? Are we having a family meeting? Looks like it, Jesse said. Get out here. Lily bounced onto the porch and squeezed between Jesse and Caleb. Is it a good meeting or a bad meeting? Good, I think. Then I want to be part of it. You already are, little bird. You started the whole thing. I did. Yeah, you asked a question in a market, remember? Lily thought about it. Then her face cleared. The boy. You mean Jesse? I mean Jesse. She looked at her brother. So I get credit for finding him. You get credit for everything, Jesse said solemnly. I'll tell everyone. My sister saved my life by asking if we could buy me. That sounds weird when you say it like that. It was weird, but it was also right. Jesse put his arm around her. The best things usually are. Ruth leaned against Caleb's shoulder. So what's this plan of yours? He told her. About the other children, about the other minds, about building something that could help the ones who had nobody else. When he finished, she was quiet. It's dangerous, she said. Very. We could lose everything we've built. We could. The children would be at risk. Yes. She was silent for another long moment. Then she looked at Jesse. You want this? Really want it? More than anything, ma'am. Except maybe being part of this family. Why? Because somebody has to. Because kids are suffering and nobody's stopping it. He glanced at Caleb. Because that's what living means. Fighting for the ones who can't fight for themselves. Ruth nodded slowly. Then I'm in. You're sure? I lost my husband to a mine. Almost lost my children to poverty. I know what it's like to feel helpless, to think nobody's coming. Her voice hardened. If we can give other families hope, other children a chance, then yes, I'm sure. Caleb felt something expand in his chest. Something that had been compressed for years, finally given room to breathe. Then we do it together, he said. All of us. All of us, Ruth agreed. All of us, Lily echoed. Jesse just smiled. And there on the porch of Pine Ridge, under a sky turning gold with sunset, a new family made a new promise. Not to be safe, not to be comfortable, to matter, to fight, to never look away from suffering just because looking was easier. The world was full of throwaway children. Kids nobody wanted. Kids the system had forgotten. But the Thorne family remembered. And they were just getting started. Caleb looked at the faces around him. His daughter fierce and loyal. His son scarred but unbroken. The woman who'd walked through fire beside him and chosen to stay. This was what Clara would have wanted. What Rebecca never got the chance to see. A family built not from blood, but from choice. Not from convenience, but from courage. Not from perfect circumstances, but from the determination to make circumstances better. Pa, Jesse's voice broke through his thoughts. Yeah. Thank you. For everything. For not walking past me that day. For coming back when they took me. For believing I was worth saving. You were always worth saving, Jesse. You just needed someone to see it. You saw it. No. Caleb pulled his son close. Lily saw it. I just finally learned to trust her judgment. Lily beamed. I have excellent judgment. Don't let it go to your head. Too late. They laughed. All of them. The sound carried across the valley, mixing with birdsong and the rustle of new leaves. The mountains stood eternal. The creek ran clear. The cabin at Pine Ridge held fast against the world. And inside it, a family strange and scarred, and cobbled together from broken pieces, became whole. Not because they had no cracks, but because they filled each other's cracks with gold. That was the secret Caleb realized. The thing Clara had tried to teach him all those years ago. You didn't find the perfect family. You built it. One broken piece at a time. One act of courage at a time. One impossible choice at a time. Until suddenly, impossibly, you had something worth fighting for. Something worth dying for. Something worth living for. Caleb Thorne had spent 4 years running from ghosts. Now he had a reason to stop running. Now he had a family. And that family had just declared war on every mine, every company, every system that treated children as disposable. It wouldn't be easy. It would probably be the hardest thing any of them had ever done. But they would do it together, because that's what the Thornes did. They fought. They survived. They lived. And they never ever gave up on each other. The sun set over Pine Ridge, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, new children to save. But tonight, there was only this. A father and his children. A woman who'd chosen to stand beside them. A future wide open with possibility. Jesse leaned against Caleb's shoulder. Lily curled against his other side. Ruth's hand remained warm in his. "I love you all," Caleb said quietly. "Every single one of you." "We love you too, Pa," Jesse whispered. "Forever and ever," Lily added. Ruth said nothing, just squeezed his hand and smiled. And in that moment, everything Caleb had lost. Clara. Rebecca, the years of loneliness and grief transformed into something new, not forgotten, never forgotten, but redeemed, made meaningful, made whole. The boy nobody wanted had become a son. The man who'd closed his heart had learned to love again. And a simple question from a 6-year-old girl had changed everything. Can we buy that boy Papa No Lily? We can't buy him, but we can save him. We can love him. We can make him ours. And that's exactly what they did.